Welcome back to the Malaysia Money Matters show. It's the 28th of March, 2025, and we've got a lot to cover today.
Yeah, we do.
Some interesting stuff going on in the markets, both here in Malaysia and globally.
Absolutely. A lot happening.
So let's jump right into it with the Malaysian company news.
Yeah, sounds good.
So first up, we have Amana Saham Nasional, or ASNB as a lot of people know it.
Yeah.
And they've announced a pretty substantial total income distribution coming in at 2.18 billion ringgit.
Wow, that's a big number.
Yeah, it is for the financial year ending just this month, March 2025, for both ASB2 and ASM.
Right.
So this is exciting news for a lot of Malaysians, I think.
Yeah, definitely a lot of people invested in those funds.
Right, and they're both seeing their highest payouts in 6 years. ASB2 is offering 5.5 sen per unit, totaling 730 million ringgit. And that's going to benefit over 614,000 unit holders.
Okay.
And ASM isn't too far behind at 5 sen per unit, which amounts to 1.45 billion ringgit. And that's for over 740,000 unit holders.
So where's all this strong performance coming from?
Well, ASNB has said that it's largely due to their positive returns from their equity investments.
Yeah.
Both in Malaysia and internationally.
Okay, so the companies they've invested in have been doing well?
Yeah, basically. And then on top of that, they've got a strategy of asset diversification.
Right, so they're not putting all their eggs in one basket.
Exactly.
Spreading the risk a little bit.
Right, spreading the risk, investing in different types of assets in different regions.
Makes sense.
And so that's really helped them to capitalize on the, favorable market conditions. And then also just something to note, these payouts, they will be automatically reinvested on April 1st.
Oh, okay, good to know.
Yeah, and transactions for both of these funds, they are being temporarily halted from today, the 28th, until the end of March.
All right, so keep that in mind if you're thinking of making any moves.
Exactly. So moving on to some specific companies now, we've got AMMB Holdings, or Ambank as many people know it. And analysts are predicting a potentially higher dividend payout for their financial year, which ends this month. And they've reportedly revised their target for dividend payout ratio up to 60% by FY 2029.
So for investors, what does that actually mean for them, that higher payout ratio?
So basically, the dividend payout ratio is the percentage of a company's profits that it gives back to shareholders.
Okay.
So them aiming for a higher ratio suggests that they're pretty confident in their future profitability and they're willing to share a larger piece of that with you.
Makes sense.
Analysts have also forecasted a dividend of 27.1 sen per share for FY 2025, and that's up from 22.6 last year. And they've got a pretty positive view on the stock price as well.
So overall, pretty good news for Ambank investors.
Yeah, it seems like it. But unfortunately, it's not all good news for every company. We've got Gamuda, and their earnings forecasts have been adjusted downwards.
Oh, not so good.
Yeah, after a bit of a weaker than expected first half of the year. They've had some lower property margins over in Vietnam, and a bit of a squeeze on their construction profit margins too.
So what's their plan to address that?
Well, they're aiming for a strong order book by the end of the year. And they're bidding on some major infrastructure projects here in Malaysia, Australia, and Taiwan.
Wow, so they're really branching out.
Yeah, and they're focusing on essential sectors like water, data centers, and MRT. So, those are all areas that are probably going to see a lot of growth in the coming years.
Yeah, it makes sense to focus on those areas with growing demand.
Exactly. So even though they had a bit of a tough first half, they seem to be, positioning themselves well for the future.
It's a long-term game.
It is. Now we've got Capital A, the company behind AirAsia,
Right.
and they're asking for a little bit more time to issue the paperwork for their PN17 regularization plan.
Okay, and for those who aren't familiar with that term, what does that mean?
So PN17, it's basically a classification that Bursa Malaysia uses for companies that are financially distressed.
Okay, so they're trying to get out of that category.
Yeah, exactly. Their plan has already been approved back in March, but this extension is really just about making sure that they have everything in order to get off that list.
Sorry, so just a procedural step.
Yeah, exactly. Next up, we have SitePark Resources, and they've managed to stay profitable for the second quarter in a row. And this is partly thanks to a one-off gain from a settlement related to their waste-to-energy plant in Negeri Sembilan.
Interesting. So what's their outlook looking like for the future?
Well, they've said that they're aiming for 800 megawatts of renewable energy capacity by 2027.
That's ambitious.
It is, and they're looking for partners to help them expand into this sector.
It seems like a lot of companies are making that move into renewables.
Yeah, it's definitely a growing area. However, even though they've had these profits, their stock prices actually declined this year. So it seems like investors maybe want to see some more consistent profitability.
Yeah, maybe those one-off gains aren't enough to convince them.
Right. This next bit of news is could actually impact a lot of our listeners.
Oh, really?
So starting on November 1st, 2025, financial influencers who give out stock and investment tips, they're going to be regulated as capital market advertisers.
Okay, that's a big change.
It's under new guidelines from the Securities Commission.
So what's the reason behind that?
Well, it's really about trying to enhance investor protection.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, because, with so many people getting their financial advice online these days.
Yeah, it's a whole new world.
It is. And so the Securities Commission is trying to make sure that these influencers are being held accountable.
So they're making sure that the advice is sound and reliable.
Right. And that they're following the same rules as other financial advertisers.
It's a good move to protect investors.
Absolutely. Now we've got Flexidynamic Holdings, and they've announced that they're going to acquire FormTech Engineering.
Okay, and what does FormTech do?
So they manufacture glove formers.
Glove formers.
Yeah. So it's a key part of the rubber glove manufacturing process. And this acquisition is really about expanding their presence in that industry.
So it's a strategic move to grow their business.
Exactly. FormTech has a pretty big production capacity, and they serve customers in 15 countries.
Wow. So they've already got a pretty good footprint.
Yeah, and Flexidynamic is actually pretty optimistic about the long-term prospects, especially because the U.S. has put tariffs on gloves from China.
Right, so they see an opportunity there.
They do. Moving on, we have some news from Bursa Malaysia, the operator of our stock exchange. And they've got a new non-executive chairman.
Okay, who is it?
So it's Abdul Farid Alias, the former CEO of Maybank.
Wow, so a very experienced leader.
He is, and he's replacing Abdul Wahid Omar, who is retiring. And this change is going to take effect on May 1st.
So what kind of impact do you think this change in leadership will have?
Well, he's got a lot of experience in banking and financial services, and especially in investment banking. So I think he could bring some valuable insights to Bursa Malaysia. Next up, we have Jati Tinggi Group, and they've secured a big contract.
How big are we talking?
48.38 million ringgit.
Okay, not bad.
Yeah, and it's from Tenaga Nasional to develop power supply links for a data center in Johor. And this actually follows another data center project win for them earlier this year.
Where was that one?
That one was in Selangor.
So it seems like they're becoming quite the key player in this data center space.
Yeah, they are. And, data centers, they need a lot of reliable power.
Of course, that's essential for them to operate.
Yeah, so Jati Tinggi is really playing an important role in making sure that Malaysia's digital infrastructure can keep growing.
It's a crucial part of the digital economy, isn't it?
It is. Next, we have K1 Technology. And they're doing something a little bit different.
Oh, what's that?
They've secured a 4-year deal to distribute fertility and healthcare test kits.
Interesting. So they're moving into the healthcare sector.
Yeah, they are. And it's a bit of a diversification for them.
Yeah.
Because their core business is electronics manufacturing services.
Right. So they're expanding their offerings.
They are. The test kits are from a UK-based company called CIG Healthcare. Okay.
So it's a bit of a partnership there.
It's a good way to enter a new market by partnering with a specialist.
Yeah, exactly. Now we've got KBJ Healthcare, one of the big hospital groups here.
Right.
And they've proposed to sell 2 of their hospital properties to Alaquar Healthcare REIT for 241 million ringgit. But then they're going to lease them back.
So it's a sale and leaseback arrangement?
Exactly.
So what's the advantage of doing that?
So basically, they're unlocking the capital that's tied up in those properties.
Okay.
And they can use that money for things like debt repayment or working capital. And it also strengthens their overall financial position.
But they still get to operate the hospitals.
Yeah, they do because they lease them back.
So it's a win-win for them.
Yeah, seems like it. They're also planning to renew lease agreements for some other properties that are already within the REIT.
So they're really solidifying their relationship with the REIT. They are. Just quickly for listeners who might not know, a REIT stands for Real Estate Investment Trust. And it's basically a company that owns and operates income-producing real estate.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
No problem. All right, moving on to Malakoff Corp. They've secured the second phase of a solar energy contract.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and it's with their sister company, Northport.
Okay.
And they're going to be installing a really big rooftop solar system at Northport's CT2 building.
So they're expanding their solar capacity.
They are, and this brings Northport's total solar capacity up to 4.4 megawatts.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
It is, and it's a good sign that they're, really committed to sustainable energy.
Yeah, it's good to see companies taking that seriously.
It is. Now we have Muhiba Engineering, and they've increased their stake in Masterpack Group, which is a packaging company, and their stake is now up to 31%.
So they've been buying up more shares.
They have.
And why are they doing that?
Well, they want to boost their earnings through their share of Masterpack's profits, and also any dividends that Masterpack might pay out.
So it's a strategic investment for them.
Yeah, it is. It's a way to get a more stable recurring income. And finally, for our Malaysian company news, we've got Petronas, our national oil and gas company, and they've raised $5 billion US.
Wow.
Yeah, through a bond issuance. And this was their first dollar bond issuance in 4 years, and it was massively oversubscribed.
So there was a lot of demand for those bonds.
There was huge demand from international investors.
Okay, so what does that tell us?
Well, I think it shows that investors are still really confident in Petronas' financial health and their future prospects.
They see Petronas as a safe bet.
Yeah, basically.
Right.
And the money that they raise, they're
Yeah.
going to use it for their general business needs.
Okay, so it gives them a lot of flexibility.
Exactly. All right, now let's shift gears a little bit and take a look at some international news.
So good.
So over in China, Vice Premier Ding Xuexiang, he's come out and said that their economy is off to a good start this year.
Okay, that's positive.
Yeah. And he reckons that they're on track to meet their growth target of around 5%. And a big part of that is their advancements in things like AI.
So they're really pushing forward with technology.
They are. They are.
But do you think there are any reasons to be cautious about the Chinese economy?
Well, while the official line is pretty optimistic, there have been some reports of a significant drop in foreign direct investment into China in January. So that suggests that maybe some international investors are being a little bit cautious.
So maybe not everyone's convinced about their growth prospects?
Right. And also the Chinese central bank, they've admitted that their overall debt level has actually exceeded 300% of GDP.
Wow, that's a lot of debt.
It is. And they've said that it's likely to increase even further. But they are still sticking to their guns and saying that they're going to keep a supportive monetary policy.
So they're trying to stimulate the economy.
Yeah, basically. Over in the U.S. now, their economy grew at a faster pace than expected in the fourth quarter of 2024.
Okay, so that's good news.
It is. It was actually revised upwards to 2.4%, and a key measure of inflation was also revised downwards.
So things are looking up for the U.S. economy.
Yeah, it seems like it, but there are some potential storm clouds on the horizon.
Oh, really? What kind of storm clouds?
Well, the Congressional Budget Office has warned that the U.S. Treasury might actually default on its debt.
Default on its debt. Wow, that's serious.
Yeah, it is. And they're saying it could happen as early as August this year if the debt limit isn't raised or suspended.
And what would that mean for the global economy?
It could have some really serious consequences. It would basically be a huge shock to the financial system, and it could trigger a global recession.
Okay, so that's something to keep a close eye on.
Definitely. On top of that, President Trump has announced a 25% tariff on auto imports.
Oh boy, more tariffs.
Yeah, and that's going to take effect on April 2nd.
And how could that affect Malaysia?
Well, it might not directly impact us, but it could have some indirect effects because we're part of global supply chains.
Right, so if trade slows down, it could affect us.
Exactly. And then another interesting development is that investors seem to be shifting their money back into China.
Really?
Yeah, they're moving out of a popular emerging market ETF, which doesn't include China, and they're putting it back into China-focused funds.
So they're more optimistic about China than other emerging markets.
Yeah, it seems like it. And they're particularly excited about China's AI development and also the stimulus measures that the government is taking. And we also saw gold prices rise after that tariff announcement.
Oh, so investors are looking for safe haven assets.
Yeah, actually. When there's uncertainty in the global economy, gold tends to do well.
Right, it's seen as a safe bet.
Exactly. Now, just a quick update from Singapore. Their monetary authority is asking for feedback on some proposed new rules.
What are the rules about?
So they want to let retail investors invest in private market investment funds through a new long-term investment fund framework.
So that would give them access to investments that aren't publicly traded.
Exactly. And the idea is to give them more investment options and potentially higher returns.
But those investments can be riskier too, right?
They can. So it's important for investors to do their research and understand the risk before they jump in.
Absolutely.
And finally, in our international news roundup, Indonesia's palm oil inventory increased in January.
Okay, why is that?
So their exports fell, even though production actually decreased slightly.
So less demand from overseas buyers.
Yeah, and the main reason for that was lower demand from India and China. And this is something that we need to pay attention to here in Malaysia.
Why is that?
Well, Indonesia is the world's largest producer of palm oil.
Right.
So any changes in global demand can really impact our own palm oil sector.
So we're closely linked to what's happening in Indonesia.
We are. And then lastly, we have a quick update on the Malaysian political front. So the government is still working on the details of the targeted RON95 fuel subsidy.
All right, what's the latest on that?
So they're planning to have a two-tier pricing system, and they might use the MyCAD to implement it.
Oh, interesting. So similar to the SARA program.
Yeah, exactly. And the idea is to make sure that over 85% of the population will still get the subsidized price.
So it's about making sure the help goes to those who need it most.
Exactly. We're expecting to hear more details about this after the first half of the year.
So we'll have to wait and see how it all unfolds.
We will. So there you have it. That's our rundown of the key financial and economic news affecting Malaysia and the world.
It's certainly a lot to digest.
It is. There's always something happening. You know, we've got potential higher dividends, we've got shifts in investment flows, evolving trade landscapes. It's a lot to keep track of.
It really is. But I think one of the most exciting pieces of news today has to be those significant jumps in income distribution from ASNB.
Yeah, I agree. Those are big payouts for ASB2 and ASM unit holders.
The highest in 6 years, right?
Yeah. And that's really going to make a difference for a lot of people.
Absolutely. For a lot of families.
Yeah.
That extra income could really come in handy.
It could. And it's a good reminder that even amidst all the uncertainty, there are still opportunities out there to grow your wealth.
Especially if you're invested in well-managed funds.
Right. So we hope you found this deep dive helpful and that you have a clearer picture of what's going on and why it matters.
It's all about staying informed.
It is, because the more you know, the better equipped you are to make those sound financial decisions. And if you want to stay up to date on all things Malaysia Money Matters, make sure to subscribe to our podcast. We'll be back next time with more deep dives to help you navigate the financial world. Until then, take care.
Hey there, thanks for tuning in. If you would like a deeper dive into all the investment opportunities from today's news, subscribe to my newsletter at moneymatters.substack.com. I will be sharing a deeper analysis of the key investment opportunities from today's news, including what makes these opportunities stand out and how they fit into the broader market trends. By subscribing to the Malaysia Money Matters newsletter, you will also get exclusive insights on my watch list and portfolio and fundamental reports on Malaysian listed companies.